welcome back to The Report. In tonight's feature discussion, we examine tensions between some members of the Muslim community and the Ahmadiyya community, following the murder of Asad Shah, a shopkeeper in Glasgow, who was killed in a religious prejudice attack, according to police. In this exclusive report, our political correspondent Davide Salvi looks at the reactions to the murder and what this means for the Ahmadiyya community in Britain.
Asad Shah was a shopkeeper from the multicultural Showlands area of Glasgow. His local community remembers him as a gentleman and a devoted member of the Ahmadiyya community. Every year, they say, Asad would print out his own Christmas cards with personal messages for his customers. But 3 days before Easter, he was brutally murdered outside his shop in Glasgow. Just a few hours before, he wished on Facebook a happy Easter to his beloved Christian nation. At first, investigators thought it was a racially motivated hate crime. A vigil organized by 2 local women, 1 Muslim and 1 Christian, was publicized on social media under the hashtag "This is not who we are." More than £110,000 has been raised for his family through public donations. But as the hours passed, it became clear that Asad's death was a so-called religiously prejudiced murder. Tanvir Ahmed, a 32-year-old man from Bradford, was charged with the attack. Sunni issued a statement claiming he killed Asad because he disrespected Islam by being a member of the Ahmadiyya community. Shortly after the attack, a Facebook group called Tafuts Khatme Nubuat posted a link to the article saying, "Congratulations to all Muslim." The Facebook page has since been taken down. Ahmadiyya leaders condemned the statement, and the Muslim Council of Britain described the targeting of Ahmadiyyas for their beliefs as unacceptable.
Despite our clear theological beliefs, we note that pressure is mounting to describe this community as Muslims. Muslims should not be forced to class Ahmadis as Muslims if they do not wish to do so. At this time, we call on Muslims to be sensitive and, above all, respect all people irrespective of belief or background. The targeting of Ahmadis for their beliefs is totally unacceptable.
The vibrant Ahmadiyya community in London was in deep shock. This was the first such attack against one of their members in Britain, they say. Friday prayers after the killing in Glasgow have attracted the media attention. Thousands of people flock every Friday in the Batul Futu Mosque, one of the largest Ahmadiyya prayer halls in Western Europe. This resilient community has recently opened a radio and a TV station where they broadcast live the sermons of their worldwide spiritual leader, Hazrat Misra Masroor Ahmad. From there, every Friday he makes an hour-long speech which is simultaneously translated in 7 different languages. Muslims and Ahmadiyya alike are hoping there will be no escalation of violence. The UK president of the Ahmadiyya Association called for peace with the Muslim community.
Our community has been trying very actively to bring all the Muslim communities together. We believed that the promised reformer that came, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, he came to bring all the Muslims and other communities together in order to create peace in this world.
Davide Salvi, The Report.
Great misfortune that.
Well, joining me on Skype to discuss this issue is Muslim affairs commentator Mo Ansar. And in the studio is Dr. Alhagi Manta Drammeh, Associate Professor of Theology and Philosophy at the Muslim College of London. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Let me start with you, Dr. Alhagi. What are the main theological differences between Muslims and the Ahmadiyyas?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and our salutations to Prophet Muhammad and his family. This is a very interesting and big question. If you look at the history of the Ahmadiyya movement, it is a fairly new movement that started towards the end of the 19th century in Qadian, in Punjab, in India. And so it was formed towards the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century. When you look at Islam, Islamic history, in terms of its manifestation and application, you find trends in terms of people's interpretations and understandings. So here comes the Ahmadiyya movement within the Indian subcontinent. At that time, in terms of, basically, if you look at the literature of the Ahmadiyya people themselves, one of the magazines they normally write in Arabic is called Taqwa. They believe in, basically, in everything that Muslims believe in.
And they have the Quran as their holy book.
As their holy book, and Hadith as well, but some interpretation of certain things may not be accepted by a majority of Muslims. I think what the thorny issue basically between the Ahmadiyyas and the majority of Muslim writers or Muslim critiques of Ahmadiyya movement is about the finality of Prophet Muhammad, Khatim al-Nabiyyin. For them, they see it as Khatim al-Nabiyyin. Khatim means seal, and not Khatim. Khatim, in Arabic, of course, if you go back to the recitation of the Quran, Khatim and Khatam, they mean the same thing, according to the bulk majority of Muslim scholars of exegesis, tafsir. But for them, although they believe that Prophet Muhammad was the last prophet, but that doesn't necessarily mean that other prophets will not come, in different forms. And again, it's about interpretation and understanding. That particular thing, I think, is not endorsed.
But they have their own prophet.
They see Mirza Ghulam Ahmad as a prophet, okay, that came to revitalize and renew the message of Islam. So this is the area where
this,
different
of course, is unacceptable to Orthodox
yes,
Muslims.
most of the Orthodox Muslims, most of the Muslims, thinkers, writers, believers, do believe that no prophet will come, after the Prophet Muhammad. So this is the area.
And they have their own mosques, as we saw in the film.
Yes.
So they don't try and pray in an ordinary Muslim mosque.
Yes.
So there's no problem there about spaces and...
Yes, they have their own, wherever they go to, they have their own mosques. In England, for example, or in Africa, they have their own mosques, for themselves and for their devotees.
Let me bring in Mohammed Ansar. Are you fearful that there could be violence, that this could be the first sign of some violence in Britain between Ahmadiyyas and other people?
I don't think so, and I certainly hope it won't be. The killing of Asad Shah was tragic. It's been condemned across the board. I think, as the brother mentions, there are some quite significant theological differences between the broader Muslim community, and I think we're talking across the spectrum here within the Sunni and Shia community and within Ahmadiyyas. And as the Muslim Council of Britain have quite rightly said, there should be no pressure on Muslim organisations and recognised Muslim theological organisations and bodies to have to necessarily define the Ahmadiyya community as being Muslim. My understanding is that all of the schools of thought of Sunni and Shia scholarship consider the Ahmadiyya community to actually be outside of the fold of Islam because of some of the theological differences. So I think first and foremost we need to iterate for people within the Muslim communities and those outside of, and including the Ahmadiyya communities, that I don't see this as a sectarian issue. And I think anybody who is painting this as somehow sectarian violence, as you may see between Sunni and Shia, this is a complete anathema. So
well, it's true that
this is an isolated incident.
Case, but what about these leaflets that seem to be circulating in various places saying that these people should be eliminated or ostracized or even killed?
Now, these kind of things are absolutely beyond the pale. We have to condemn any such literature that says about any community, let alone Ahmadiyya community, that they should be mistreated, discriminated against, let alone attacked or murdered or anything else. I've been challenged on social media and asked questions about my views about Ahmadiyya communities. I mean, I'm somebody who lives in Hampshire, not far from where I am today, just down the road in Winchester. In the outskirts of Winchester, they have their annual Jalsa, so their annual gathering, where there are about 30,000 of the Ahmadiyya community come here. And for many years, I've supported Ahmadiyya activists on interfaith work, on charitable work, on their organisational work. They've invited me along to their jalsa many times. I have very good relations with the Ahmadiyya community, and me personally as well. I grew up in North London amongst what we called within the Pakistani community Mirzai, after Ghulam Mirza. So we didn't see any differences. We lived, ate, played alongside one another, but as an adult, when you become older and you realise actually there are some deep theological differences between the communities, I think once you are aware of these things, and you have to handle these things with sensitivity. So any kind of literature that says about the Ahmadiyya community that they should be harmed or mistreated is troublesome. I do think, however, if I may just add one quick thing, which is the media has been very, very quick to pounce on this and to paint it in three main ways. One is that it's a sectarian issue. Two, that somehow mainstream Islam requires reform because of this, and that somehow mainstream Islamic ideas of theology or communities support this kind of behaviour, which of course they don't. And thirdly, that these leaflets somehow, and I've seen them from afar and had a look at them, I don't think they actually quite say kill Ahmadiyyas, but what they do, which is a real problem, is to say that apostasy should be punished by death, which I don't agree with, and I'm absolutely on the record on this, that I don't agree that that is the case. This is about treason, not apostasy from freedom of speech and expression and belief, and in terms of religious belief. Essentially it joins the dots, these leaflets do. They say you should punish apostates with death, and Ahmadis or Qadianis are apostates. So I think that is a serious problem.
Let me come back to you, Alhagi. We just heard about the pilgrimage that they do every year. There was a time when the Ahmadiyya went to Mecca for the Hajj, isn't that the case? And then they were told they couldn't come.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Let me just say a few words in addition to what the brother has said. That of course in Islam, human life is sacred. There's no argument about that. When the Quran talks about this sanctity of human life, it doesn't differentiate between Muslim and non-Muslim. Human life in general. Man qatl nafsan bighayri nafsin aw fasadin fil ardi man qatla an-nasa jami'a. Whosoever kills a nafs, a soul, and Arabic is very critical here, is indefinite article, which means any soul, whether you like it or not, is valid in the sight of God. So nobody can do that. In terms of the pilgrimage, yes, I have the understanding that they are not allowed to go to Mecca for pilgrimage, because that they are believed to not be within the mainstream Islamic theological discourse. Because of that, I think they're not allowed, by the Saudi government, not to.
Now, there has been violence in Pakistan where they originated. Is that now sort of expanding or increasing, or is it?
I don't think so.
Isolated?
I don't think so. I think these are isolated. In Islam, you cannot impose anything on anybody. Religion has to be based on freedom, which is very fundamental to Islamic theological discussion. La ikraha fi din. There's no compulsory religion. And this is the basic foundation of Islam. Ya ayyuhal kafirun. Qul ya ayyuhal kafirun la a'budu ma ta'budun. Tell them we will not believe in what they believe, and they don't believe in what I believe. So everybody has the freedom to believe in whatever they want to believe in. But I think we've got to differentiate here, gentlemen, between what I call politics and theology. Many times people confuse the two, and these have to be separated. Politics has its domain, and the theology has its domain. Some of the actions by people are purely political, and they have not to do with Islamic theology as such.
But you think the situation is quite isolated in Britain? You see no signs that there could be some tension developing?
I think engagement is very important. Education is very important. Interfaith dialogue, the brother referred to, is very important. I work as well as head of interfaith department at the Central Mosque of London here. So that's very fundamental to Islam. In fact, if you go back to history, a whole chapter, Ali Imran, chapter 4 of the Quran, is dedicated to interfaith. When Prophet Muhammad, invited the Christians of Najran, and they had debate. They disagreed with him, he disagreed with them, they agreed on certain points, and disagreed on certain points. Tell them, the people of the book, let's come on the same platform, ethical values we share with Jews and Christians, and so on and so forth. So there are foundations on which we've got to stand, commonalities we share as human beings, as religious believers, and so on and so forth, as human beings in general. And many times Quran, refers to this, tell people good, deal with people good. Nas, people has been emphasized a lot in the Quranic discourse as well, which I think we need to explore.
Let me come back to you, Mo. We're running slowly out of time. Do you feel that the media is really to blame? I mean, we were very careful to show in our news report at the beginning of the program some quite sober headlines that didn't mention anything about who the person was who attacked the Asad Shah or killed him. So the media is quite responsible, some of it.
The media has been complicit in giving a very unrepresentative and skewed picture of Muslim life and Islam's in this country, particularly the mainstream media. Of course, there is a tendency to promote neoconservative Muslims who share and parrot the government line on things like prevent and this, what I often call the faux reform of Islam, which isn't a real reformation within Islam. And at the same time, we've seen a disproportionate focus actually in recent times of the Ahmadiyya community. So rather than having mainstream commentators, Muslim voices, community voices, and there is a whole plethora and a wide array of those voices, the media, mainstream media in this country has been very careful at selecting the kind of Muslim voices it wants to portray. I think at the same time, we have to be fair and we have to be critical friends to the Ahmadiyya community. Some of the comments which they've made, we've seen Ahmadiyya spokespeople come out and essentially apostatize and call apostates any Muslim who doesn't believe in the spiritual leader of the Ahmadiyya community. These kind of things are real problems. And I think one of the concerns you've pointed out, and I think we do need to talk about, is the fact that we need to be building bridges between communities. The kind of language which divides communities, which increases intolerance, which increases hate and prejudice amongst communities, is something we don't need. So neither do we need the Ahmadiyya community to be pointing fingers at the mainstream, the overwhelming body, the corpus of the Muslim communities in this country. But at the same time, we need Muslims from the mainstream Muslim communities and elsewhere to be increasingly tolerant, to welcome Ahmadiyya communities into the fold. Ahmadiyya communities, sadly, whenever I've been involved in leading charities and organisations, doing community events, do feel that they're disenfranchised and on the fringes. And I think pursuing this language where they are asking communities to accept them as Muslim is sensitive and is problematic, and we do need to deal with these issues sensitively.
Okay, well, on that note and the need for interfaith dialogue, we'll have to end the discussion. Thank you very much, Alhagi. Thank you very much, Mo. On that note, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. I thank my guests on the program today. Thank you all at home for taking the time to watch. You can keep up with us, of course, on Twitter by following @IslamChannelCA by using #TheReport. Now we'll leave you with some scenes of a 6-story building which was under construction in the Ugandan capital of Kampala and then collapsed. 1 person died, 7 people were taken out from the rubble. And some of those who were trapped did manage to make phone calls to their families and friends, alerting them that they were still alive. Good night.
Hello.